Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, hello to the live broadcast. Your favorite 60 minutes on the most important program starts with breaking news in response to the U.S. attack on Ukraine. Luhansk's oil depot itself and other Russian energy facilities in Kiev have launched a new large-scale group strike with the Dagger air ballistic hypersonic missile system from Russia, and Belgorod on energy facilities and businesses in Ukraine. Explosions rang out in Vinnytsia, Dnipropetrovsk and Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, Poltava, Kiev and Kirovograd. It is understood that the Dagger flew to the city where the large underground gas storage is located. In addition, the missile attack was carried out on the target of Dobro Otvori, where the test is located in the Ivano-Frankivsk region. Explosion in the Bronstein area of the power plant. In addition, Ukrainian resources reported a series of bombings in Kiev. Arrives were also recorded in the Ledyhenskaya Tesa region near Vinnytsia in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The attack hit the central Dnieper hydropower station. A total of more than 50 missiles were used to attack and more than 20 Geranas were used. This map shows the approximate flight trajectories of various missiles and drones. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that all designated targets had been hit, resulting in a significant reduction in Ukraine's ability to produce military products. In addition, Western weapons and military equipment were transferred to the line of combat contact. The situation on the front line is developing rapidly, and the Ministry of Defense reported that the Russian army has successfully completely liberated the Kislovka settlements such as Kharkiv Oblast and Novokalinovo. In DNR, the offensive continues in the direction of Mariinsky. In Krasnogorsk, most of the industrial area was behind the Russian army at this time, and the attack was carried out in two directions from the industrial area to the old Mikhailovka side along Nakimov Street. As you can understand, according to the topographic map and the city, the main height is behind our soldiers, so the retention of Krasnogorsk. To put it mildly, the Ukrainian armed forces look like a very suspicious enterprise. Unexpectedly for the Ukrainian General Staff, the Russian offensive also began in the direction of Nevsky. It's no longer a protrusion. Today, news emerged that Russian troops had successfully entered the country. Ukrainian sources also confirmed this. According to them, a unit of the Ukrainian armed forces has left the village and is now in a gray area. After the old major, the crop battle for the settlement began. Look at it this way, the Russian attack aircraft on the AT armored personnel carrier boldly broke through the wall of fire with a protective mask, withstood a hit, and then made 3 more mistakes from the grenade launcher. After the landing, there is no word to describe the Iron Man. The commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, Sversky, spent 14 naftilan on the Eastern Front to describe the heroes behind the difficult situation on the front line, and then reported that Moscow's next target.
2 дня провел на Восточном фронте, после чего отрапортовал, что следующие цели Москвы
Pokrovskaya Kurakova. If we look at the map with our own eyes, we can see that after the capture of Arkhangelsk ceramics, New Alexandrovka did not melt, and an operational vacuum was formed until the large settlement of Pokrovsky. There's almost no ahead. Another possible blow could be Kurakov on the left or Konstantinovka, who is on the right, if you add the imminent loss of the warriors' high clock.
Если добавить к этому скорую потерю ВСУ Часова Яра, то еще
You could be in another cauldron, New York or Novgorod. The enemy continued to retreat, leaving one settlement after another. Footage from Ireland shows Ukrainian men wearing ribbons protesting on posters. Look, Ukraine, stop torturing men. I'm not cannon fodder. Ukraine is no longer a democracy. Human rights for all. The boys are probably protesting against restrictions on consular services for men abroad.
Вероятно, хлопцы протестуют против ограничений по консульским услугам для мужчин за границей.
Moreover, they are in vain servants of the people named Duda, declaring democracy, rights, and freedom in Ukraine. They will remember that one day after the war, the regime's fierce propagandists began to talk about the values of the euro. Natalka Museychuk says Ukraine's democratic period is over. The SBU ambulance quotes Natolka will knock on everyone's door and urges the boys to voluntarily go to the military registration and conscription office. Coincidentally, Natolka Museychuk's son is studying abroad, but this is an annoying exception. Natalka has explained that she did not raise her children in this context for war without waiting for Ukrainian men to knock on the door.
На таком фоне, не дожидаясь стука в дверь, украинские мужчины
Ryazanovsky Shirley Merle's style of ingenuity is running look. The 44-year-old Golden Nest resident wore a wig, put on makeup, dressed as a woman, and took his sister's passport. Transcarpathian border guards quickly exposed him, although the man held on to the end, claiming he was a woman, according to the State Border Service.
Надел парик, нанес макияж, оделся в женщину, взял паспорт сестры. Закарпатские пограничники быстро его разоблачили, хотя мужчина до последнего держался. Утверждал, что он женщина. Еще один украинец пытался переплыть.
Another Ukrainian tried to swim across the Tisa River across the border with Romania, but his body was found drowned by Romanians on their side of the border. In 2 years, 25 people have died as men try to flee Ukraine by bird. This is Lviv, another volunteer. Surprisingly, people in western Ukraine had to be sent to the front line because theoretically, for potential, they should go to war first.
Ведь по идее западенцы первыми должны были отправиться на войну с москалями.
The Khmelnytsky Regional Military Registration and Recruitment Office reported that spreading information on social networks about the location of military commissars' movements could be criminally liable in the form of 5 to 8 years in prison. The Kiev regime does not have enough cannon fodder. Ukrainian authorities are increasingly asking sponsors not only to provide money and weapons, but also to provide soldiers. The Kremlin was called an extremely provocative one. A petition on Zelensky's website called for foreign troops to enter Ukraine. Peskov stressed that NATO countries directly intervened in the conflict, which brought great danger to the Baltic border. The threat of World War III is not frightening, as Lithuanian Prime Minister Ingrid Šimonytė claims he is ready to send soldiers to. She said Ukraine was allegedly part of a training mission, Financial Times. According to Chancellor Ketovaya, the steps have been approved by the country's parliament. The German Chancellor arrived in the same Lithuania. Scholz apparently intends to personally repel Putin's attack. In any case, Polov climbed onto a wheeled armored personnel carrier, a Bundeswehr Boxer, and tried to show Moscow NATO's strength and unity. Like, Germany is determined to protect every square millimeter. But the German Chancellor could not even impress his compatriots on the territory of the Union. The fact is that Scholz rode an armored vehicle with Lithuanian President Nausėda on a Boxer, and they crossed the route from the press conference to the military training ground. Spiegel wrote that it looked grotesque. The size of the Boxers is very impressive, with Nausėda's height of 192 centimeters in their background being very low. Scholz looked caricatured, which didn't stop the German Chancellor from boasting that Berlin had begun transferring Bundeswehr brigades to Lithuania. Obviously, the plan was that if the Baltic states were to be sent to die as planned, the Germans would stay behind, but Scholz also decided to talk about how the Red Army was very peculiar. 79 years ago, it was not the Soviet Union, Hitler, or the Three Reich that liberated Germany and the whole world from Nazi tyranny. The German Chancellor did not mention that someone had liberated the Germans from such a person, they said. This is the mysterious injection feast. Scholz apparently did not want voters to have uncomfortable questions, which made Olaf unhappy because the Chancellor, who was constantly shouting Russian threats, was increasingly like the leader of the empire. On the eve of May 9th, Europe and Ukraine continued to go crazy with Latvia. Now you can't even put carnations where the Soviet soldier monument stands. Now he faces up to 6 years in prison for this. The reason is that May 9th has been declared a day of mourning in Latvia. All large-scale solemn and recreational activities are prohibited. On May 8th and 9th, fireworks will also be banned, while marches will be allowed to commemorate the victims of hostilities and condemn Russian aggression, not without the persecution of the letter Z3 and the St. George ribbon. These are symbols related to the Russian army, so they are prohibited from being displayed in public. Estonia did the same in the small but very Russian-phobic republic, and on May 9th, it banned marches. anything related to Russia. It is worth noting that there have never been such restrictions on Nazi marches, but Zelensky continues to struggle with common sense. At the same time, everything that can somehow remind you of the Soviet past. In Ukraine, he has made May 9th a Europe Day instead of Victory Day, and Ukrainians are celebrating Memorial and Reconciliation Day. The main message these horrors. Today's Pravda Avenue in Kiev has been renamed after Europeans symbolically. Such a union-hammered decolonization policy. Therefore, the avenue is said to be named after the newspaper, however. As a Ukrainian man, Kurt, you continue to rewrite history and trample on the memory of your ancestors.